Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Kenny McKeithen and I've just been going through some of the images I was able to capture in 2020. I know that for most of us, 2020 was a year we would just as soon forget. But I was able to get out and capture some rather memorable images. I'd like to take a few minutes and share those images with you. Why don't we take a look? Okay, so this first image was caught very early last year, early January. One of the first images that I shot all year long. This is a lake shore along one of the man-made lakes we have along the low country of South Carolina. We have a number of natural and man-made lakes and swamps that either go along with the man-made lakes or have been there for thousands of years. I really like the contrast, the dark trees up against the white sky and white water, and the reflections of the trees in the water. For this next image, this roadway winds through Donnelly Wildlife Management Area, which is one of several such areas we have in the low country here. This is land that's set aside for hunters and hikers and bikers and photographers. I just really like the way the pathway here leads deeper and deeper into the dark woods. It was an overcast day, not terribly bright. And I like the way the roadway just kind of disappears around the corner there. These first two images were converted to black and white in Nik Silver Efex Pro after some initial editing in Lightroom. This next image was shot on one of the beaches near St. Augustine, Florida. We were down in the area for a workshop at the alligator farm. And this is using a technique that my good friend Kate Sylvia taught me. This technique involves slowing the shutter down, or what some people refer to as dragging the shutter, and also moving the camera horizontally as the waves begin to break. The slow shutter speed combined with the camera movement smooths out all the details and results in the abstract image that you see here. This was shot just before sunrise. And the lack of light in the sky helped out with the slower shutter speed. These two adult roseate spoonbills were captured at the alligator farm in St. Augustine, Florida. You may notice at the bottom of the image there's a chick kind of bundled up under the two adults. This was shot with the 150 to 600 Sigma Sport lens, just shy of 500 millimeters. And these birds, if you've never been to the alligator farm, these birds are really rather accessible, easy to get to. They don't shy away from humans. Very easy to get in and get this kind of quality photography. This was shot on a Canon 7D Mark II, and as I said, just shy of 500 millimeter on the lens. This next image is one of two major celestial events we were able to witness this year. The other being the great conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter that occurred late in the year. This is Comet Neowise as it appeared over the southwest horizon, again over one of the lakes here in the low country. This was shot a little while after sunset. The orange in the sky is the afterglow from that sunset. And it's mostly visible because to capture the comet, you had to use a rather high ISO. And the sky appeared much darker to our eyes than the camera was actually capturing because of that elevated ISO. So again, this is Comet Neowise, and was very happy. I almost missed it. I was only able to get out and shoot it in the last days that it was visible. I think within a week or so of this image, it was probably not visible at all any longer. One of the trips that I was very fortunate to have taken in 2020 was a trip with my good friend Andy, and we went out to Mount Rainier National Park. We also saw Mount St. Helens and the coast of Oregon, which I have some of those images coming up. This is in Mount Rainier National Park. This is Christine Falls. The falls is on the opposite side of a roadway from where we shot this. I was very careful to crop the roadway out of the top of the image. You can still see a little bit of the bridge structure in the extreme upper left-hand corner, but I don't think it's much of a distraction up in that corner. Beautiful overcast day, wonderful day to be shooting waterfalls, and not a huge amount of water coming over this falls based on some of the other pictures that I've seen, but very nice, very lush green. This was in September, so we're still getting a lot of that summer green that hasn't changed over to fall color quite yet. As I said, very fortunate to have been able to take this trip. It was a thoroughly enjoyable trip. Unfortunately, once we got down into Oregon, the wildfires that were basically all over the place in September started to take over, and skies were just a horrible color, and visibility was extremely limited, and everything smelled like smoke. So we unfortunately cut the trip short by about 3 days or so. This next image was Mount Rainier. On the last morning we were there in the park, we were only in the park about 2 full days, maybe a little bit longer than that. The very last morning we were there, we came back into the park to try to photograph Mount Rainier at Reflection Lake. I could have wished for a few more clouds in the sky, but we got some really wonderful direct light on the mountain, and it was very still. Nice reflections on the lake there, and I think beautiful color on the mountain, and turned out very nice. It was very, very still. We were blessed, at least that part of the trip, we were blessed with fine weather, although that was a lot of blue skies, clear blue skies, and not a lot of clouds. So most people would say, well, you know, that's wonderful. It was beautiful, crystal clear skies. Photographers know the importance of having clouds in the sky. And so it was just a hair disappointing, not terribly though. I mean, I suppose it could have been completely the opposite and had been cloudy and rainy the whole time, or could have been cloudy and rainy the whole time. Some people go and spend a week in Mount Rainier Park and never see the mountain. So we were very fortunate, I think, in that regard. And this is Mount Rainier again from a little earlier in that trip. This is a bit of an unusual image. You'll notice that it's cropped square, 1-to-1 crop. This is actually a 2-frame panorama. The top of the image with the mountain and the bottom of the image with the river. I believe that's the White River, but I'm not entirely sure. 2 different images, and nothing special about those images. They were landscape orientation images, and I blended the 2 images together in Lightroom for somewhat of a panoramic effect, and then cropped it square to show most of the detail that I wanted you to see. Again, notice the crystal clear blue skies. I mean, we were blessed with very, very good weather for this part of the trip. But again, I could have wished for some big white puffy clouds in that sky. Mount Rainier is a beautiful area. If you have not been, you ought to make plans to go there. The mountains we have here in the southeast United States don't compare at all. And I actually mentioned that to a photographer who was out there the morning of the previous image when we were shooting sunrise, and he asked me what I liked about the area, and I said, well, the mountains are a whole lot different from what I'm used to. And he said, in what way? And I said, well, we don't see a lot of exposed rock like this. The mountains are steeper and sharper than what we're used to. You know, we don't see snow caps on the mountains down here quite a bit. I mean, this was in September after a pretty hot July and August, and you know, there's still snow all over that mountain. Of course, the peak is over 14,000 feet, but we just, you know, we don't have mountains that tall down here, and we don't have mountains that stay snow-capped year-round. here in the southeast United States. The light streaming through the fog here was captured at Heceta Head Lighthouse on the coast of Oregon. I don't have any pictures of the lighthouse itself here in this presentation, but if you get a chance to look it up, you'll see that it's probably one of the shortest lighthouses you'll ever see. It's perched very high on a mountain, so it's very high up above the water level, but above ground it's a very, very short lighthouse. Being used to the lighthouses here in the southeast, I was kind of surprised by that. This particular morning was very foggy. The fog would go away completely for short periods of time and then come right back. And so just a beautiful area to walk around in. We shot just dozens and dozens of images of the light streaming through the trees and the fog here, and just a beautiful situation to be in. Not a whole lot of post-processing here. I did bring the light level down in the lighter parts of the light streams, but pretty much this is right out of the camera. Coastal Oregon is absolutely beautiful, and I would love to go back at some point. This starfish had washed up on the beach in an area called Strawberry Hill, where earlier we had been photographing sea lions out on the rocks. By this time in the trip, the smoke from the wildfires had set in pretty heavily, and it was very difficult to make out the sea lions, much less take great pictures of them. So we were able to walk down the beach a few hundred yards and try to catch some of the marine wildlife that had washed up on the beach. This area was one of my favorite to photograph along the Oregon coast. This area is known as Thor's Well, and the well was formed when the roof of a lava cave collapsed. And if you get there when the tide is just right, the incoming tide rises up over the rocks and falls down into the well. I couldn't begin to tell you how deep that hole is. As close as we could get to it, we could never lean over it far enough to see the bottom. The best time to catch it here is rising tide, very close to high tide. I would say probably within an hour and a half to 2 hours of high tide. Eventually you reach a point where the tide is high enough that it covers the hole completely. I suppose you could also catch it on a falling tide, but as the tide's coming in and the waves are getting higher and higher, it seems to show off this formation quite a bit better. And finally here we're back to the East Coast, more specifically the mountains of western North Carolina. This is another trip my good friend Andy and I took to capture some fall color. We were just a little bit late for the peak of color in this particular area, but we were able to catch some of the patchy color that was there. This particular image was shot from an area that I've hiked to many, many times, very near Grandfather Mountain. In fact, the large mountain you see in the background is Grandfather Mountain. This trail is called Rough Ridge, and we hiked up to the rock outcroppings at the top of the ridge. And it was a partly cloudy evening, I would say mostly cloudy evening, and the sun was starting to punch through holes in the clouds, and you could see these rather brightly lit areas kind of move across the landscape as the wind moved the clouds, like a giant spotlight illuminating parts of the landscape. And so we set up a composition like this and just waited until one of those holes moved into the right position where this ridge was spotlit, and we were able to capture the color right there. Western North Carolina, the mountains of that area, just one of my favorite locations anywhere to go shooting. I thoroughly enjoy it up there. I really hope you enjoyed those images. The hardest part in putting together a video like this is picking out just 12 images out of the hundreds that I was able to shoot last year. I'd like to challenge each of you to go through your images and pick out just 12 favorites. I think you'll find it's a harder task than you think. If you like this kind of content, please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications every time I put up a new video. Thanks very much for joining me, and we'll see you again in another video. Of everything I captured in that. But I was able to get out and capture some that's wrong. I know for most of us, the year 2020 was one which just wrong. Error. The hardest part in I'd like to challenge each of you